الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. We continue inshallah ta'ala with the subject of the virtues of Ramadan, some of the fada'il of the month of Ramadan from the book by Sheikh Aziz bin Baaz rahimahullah. And as mentioned yesterday, we're in the month of Sha'ban, we're not in Ramadan. But it's part of the preparation for the month of Ramadan is to talk about it in the month of Sha'ban. This is something that the ulama have been doing from one generation to the other. And as mentioned yesterday, that if something is wajib, if something is an obligation upon a person to do, then it's an obligation to learn about it before it comes. So before you start your salah, you have to know how to make salah. Before Ramadan starts, you have to learn how to fast. Otherwise, the first day of Ramadan, a person doesn't know the intentions and things of that nature. So not just the matters of fiqh or the ahkam, but also we need to make sure that our hearts are in that state of exalting and making ta'zeem to the awamir, to the commands of Allah. And this is for everyone, young and old. We all have the same heart, alhamdulillah. We might look different from one another, but when it comes to the heart, we're all the same. So everyone has equal opportunity, if it's correct to say, to be the best with one's heart. So al-ikhlas, sincerity, the purity of intentions, there's no such a thing as I can't. I'm too young for this, or I'm too old, or I'm too weak, or I'm too rich, or too poor. It doesn't matter. So everyone should have pure, sincere intentions. When it comes to the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we all should be the same. We should do the best we can so that we perfect this love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in our hearts, the fear of Allah, the hope for the rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and so on. And to acquire that is to read the Quran, to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with His names and attributes, to learn the Tawheed, the oneness of worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the proper creed, to occupy our hearts, ourselves always with the revelation of Allah, and to be away from sins, to do the obligations, to exalt what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exalted, and to belittle what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala belittled, and so on. And this is one day after the other, and it's all by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These hearts are owned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala yahdi man yasha' وَيُضِلُّ مَن يَشَاءُ. He guides whoever He wills, and He leads astray whoever He wills, subhanahu wa ta'ala, but it's all by the justice of Allah and the mercy of Allah. And we need to turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by seeking help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to attain everything. One of which is that Allah would يُبَلِّغُنَا Ramadan, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make us witness the month of Ramadan, and to guide us and to help us to fulfill the pillar of Islam, which is fasting, to observe the obligations and the recommended acts, and to make us among the faizeen, among those who win and attain what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pleased with at all times and in the month of Ramadan. So learning this or sitting in these types of gatherings, it has an effect in the hearts that makes us make big what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exalted. So continuing, and I would just summarize some of the things, otherwise we don't have enough time, but we need to also talk about briefly about some of the ahkam after Isha, inshaAllah ta'ala, the rulings of fasting. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordained fasting upon us in the month of Ramadan. يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. The word used in the ayah, O you who believe, كتب عليكم الصيام. الصيام has been كتب, written, ordained upon you, and this is the meaning of al-kitaba. So as he mentions also in the explanation, that al-kitaba, or which literally means wrote upon you to fast in the month of Ramadan, it has two meanings. One of which is the religious meaning of it. That means you are obliged to do it. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordained something, He wrote something for you to be upon. This is the meaning of al-kitaba al-shar'iyya, the religious one. So that means this is upon you, this is an obligation upon you to fast. And there is the kitaba by the qadr of Allah. Everything is recorded when it comes to the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So whatever happened, if it happened, then we get to know what is in the qadar of Allah, in the predestiny. So we are always facing it with being pleased with Allah and having the patience to seek rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. So, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu kutiba alaykum as-siyam. First of all, the call is from Allah to the believers. So the believers are honored by this, that you are going to be among those who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala obligate upon them to fast as an act of ibadah, and the person give his full attention to how then to fulfill it, because this is a call to the believers from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in the ayat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned, as He says here, that al-mafrud, what is the fard? Is fasting the month of Ramadan for those who fulfill the conditions of it, because that requires some physical abilities. So for those who are not able to fast, there is no harm on them, and that's part of the deen, and they are still addressed by the ayah. So even if a person is not able to fast the month of Ramadan, he's still part of those who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu kutiba alaykum as-siyamu kama kutiba ala alladhina min qablikum la'allakum tattaqun. So if a person is not able to, siyam is an obligation upon him, but because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that relieved him from this obligation because he's sick, so he is submitting himself to the commands of Allah. Imagine that if it was that Sawm, fasting is an obligation, and it doesn't matter if you're dying, you have to fast. What would a believer do? سمعنا وأطعنا. We listen and we obey. He's the one that bestowed this life for us, and He's the owner of all things, subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if He commanded for the people, if you fast, you die fasting, go ahead and go for it, and He's the owner of all things, if this was the case, we have nothing but to say سمعنا وأطعنا. The attitude of that submission should be present in the heart. But as we all know, if this is said like this, people would laugh, because this is not the deen of Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most merciful. But the heart should be in that level of submission, without asking why this or that. This is command from Allah, so we fulfill and we submit ourselves to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if someone is excused, he's still part of this ayah. So they would attain also the taqwa of Allah, because why they break their fast? With ilm, with knowledge, because they fit in these categories of those who are permissible for them to break their fast. So they say سمعنا وأطعنا. And the hadith of Aisha radiallahu anha is very clear in this, of how the Sahaba radiallahu anhum understood these meanings. When a woman came and she asked Aisha radiallahu anha, the wife of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, she asked how come or why that when the woman have her menses, her monthly period, they do not make up the salah, and they make up the fasting days, which is one of the rulings of fasting. So the woman, if she has her menses in the month of Ramadan, 5, 6, 7 days or whatever, it's an obligation upon her to break her fast. It's not permissible for her to fast, and then she make up the days after Ramadan. So she asked her, how come and the salah, she doesn't make up the salah. So whenever she has her monthly cycle, she doesn't make up the salah that she missed in these days. So Aisha radiallahu anha, she did not reply like one of us would reply. It's because the wisdom behind it is the fasting is only counted days, and it's only once a year, but the salawat is so many salawat. She did not say all of this stuff. She said to her, Aharuriya anti? Are you from the Khawarij, or from these deviant ones? Right? And she said to her, very simply, كنا نؤمر بقضاء الصيام ولا نؤمر بقضاء الصلوات. We were commanded to make up the days of fasting, and we were not commanded to make up the salawat or the prayers that we missed. And that's it. Full stop, as they say. It's a command from Allah. There's a wisdom behind it, for sure, definitely, no doubt about it. But this is how, again, things are. So, the command from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is to be observed, whether in doing it or you have an excuse not to do it. All of that is within the boundaries and the limits that it's the deen of Allah. It's not desires. It's not a mufti. He will give a person a break from his own self like this. This is not this person's deen and this other person's deen. It's the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why the excuses and the rukhas and the a'dhar and all of that is part of the deen. So when we say that ad-deen yusr, the deen is yusr, is ease, as the Prophet ﷺ, he said, that means the deen itself is yusr. The deen is in itself has the ease. Not that the ease is to go against the deen or not to apply the deen. No, this is deviation. This is more difficulty for a person if he does this. But rather the deen has the yusr in it. It's already built in it, if it's correct to say, because it's from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the month of Ramadan, and this is one of the pillars of Islam, and as you see, the objective is to attain the taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if a person fulfill this obligation the way it ought to be, he should, by the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to be among the people of at-taqwa. And then the words are right after this is ayyaman ma'dudat. It's counted days. Ayyaman ma'dudat. And he mentioned that the significance of saying ayyaman ma'dudat, it's a month, right? But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala called it counted days. Did not say a month afterwards, but said counted days, to show that the matter is very easy. If it says a month, this a person might say, oh, it's too much. But it's counted days, which is it's counted days, so it becomes easy. When before you know it, the month ends. So just be patient, right? Because the matter is easy. And this is, as he mentioned, that we as human beings, we function that way. And this is by the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's like when you look at the price of something, if it's $5 is different than $4.99, right? Even though that it's close. But you need to make things easy for yourself. Even though they might be doing it in many different intentions. So it's one of the objectives is to make easy for us the ibadah. Don't look at, for example, the amount of things that or the entire life. If a person thinks how many salah that he has to make for 60 years, he might be overwhelmed. But just take it one day at a time. Then it becomes easy. If you come to someone, for someone that is not a Muslim, for example, say you have to fast, all of this, and you have to make salah, that's too much. Well, start with the first day, second day, then things becomes easy. So this is how things should be observed. And it's all from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so the help is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So then one of the things that are the verses mentioned, فَمَنْ شَهِدَ مِنْكُمُ الشَّهْرَ فَلْيَصُمْ. Whoever among you witnessed the month of Ramadan, then let him fast it. And shahida minkum ash-shahr, that means whoever witnesses it. And witnessing the month it's only sufficient for one person in the ummah to see the moon. And once you see the moon of Ramadan, if it's one person, then the entire ummah fast as a result of the witness of one Muslim. But he has to be, of course, trustworthy, someone that is a righteous person, trustworthy, and that's it. Only one person. And this issue that comes every year with, all these types of things, calculations and all of that, this is something that is we have to say it every year, inshallah. There's no such a thing as a validity for calculations to be proving the beginning of the month of Ramadan or the end of the month of Ramadan. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, صُومُوا لِرُؤْيَتِهِ وَأَفْطِرُوا لِرُؤْيَتِهِ. Fast when you see the hilal, the crescent, the moon of Ramadan, and break your fast at the end when you see the moon of Shawwal. And that's the end of it. There was calculations at their time, and the Prophet ﷺ negated the validity of it by saying, نحن أمة أمية لا نكتب ولا نحسب الشهر هكذا وهكذا. That we are an illiterate ummah, we don't write and we don't count. Meaning in our ibadah we don't need these things. The matter it's much easier than that. So the month is like this and like this. And he pointed with his two hands, والسلام, either 29 or 30. So the matter is easy and we don't need to make it difficult for ourselves. And those who would change the way of the Prophet والسلام, thinking that this makes it easy for them, because we're in the West, we have to make sure that our vacations and our times is fixed in the calendars for the next 10 years. All of that, you're making your life difficult for yourself, because it's against the way of the Prophet ﷺ. You disunite the ummah, you make confusion among the Muslimin, those who would say yes and no and things like this, because it's something introduced, new. And it's already been known at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. So stay away from this and go back to how things are and follow the way of the Prophet ﷺ. And yes, it's very nice if every Muslim in the same town, they all start the month together and they end the month together. It's a beautiful thing, and they should. But they don't have to be the entire world of the Muslims that are studying the same day and ending the same day. No, it doesn't have to be. If every place they see the moon and they don't see it, then they don't fast, and if they see it, they fast. If that is the case, it is not a sign of disunity among the ummah. It's okay. Even though the majority of the ulama, that if the hilal, if the moon is seen in one part of the world, then all of those who share a part of the night or a part of the day with them, then they should all fast. And that's what is the ease. But if they don't do that, but as long as they are following a ru'ya shar'iyya, the religious way of seeing and witnessing the moon, then they are good. And the person should not go against the people of his locality as long as they go with the religious means of starting and ending the month. But there's a long discussion, but this is at ease, inshallah. Then what needs to be observed is, as he advised, that as-sawm, fasting, is a great deed, is amalun salihun azim, a righteous good deed. It's a great deed. There's no equal in rewards to fasting. And one of the things that we need to do, inshallah, from now to Ramadan and during Ramadan, is to go through the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that talks about the virtues of Ramadan, because this is again wahy from Allah. So to purify our hearts and to exalt what the level of Ramadan in our hearts, especially the fasting of the month of Ramadan. Fasting in general, it's one of the great acts of worship, but especially Ramadan because it's an obligation, and anything as an obligation is far more in reward than anything else. And the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, which is hadith Qudsi, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, كل عمل ابن آدم له الحسنة بعشر أمثالها إلى 700 ضعف إلا الصيام فإنه لي وأنا أجزي به. That all the actions of the son of Adam is for him. The hasana, the good deed, is multiplied by 10 to 700 times in multiplication of rewards, except fasting. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَإِنَّهُ لِي, it's for me, وَأَنَا أَجْزِي بِهِ, I will recompense, I will give the reward for it. That means it's beyond the 10 times and the 700 times, it's beyond that. And to say فَإِنَّهُ لِي, it is for me, this is, as all other ulama, they say for sure, it's the sharaf and the honor of the month of Ramadan, that this is honored by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And also some that they say that it's when it comes to the rewards, it's far more than what is mentioned normally in any action. So there's no end, there's no limits to it whatsoever. And then the hadith says, إِنَّهُ تَرَكَ شَهْوَتَهُ وَطَعَامَهُ وَشَرَابَهُ مِنْ أَجْلِي. That individual, that Muslim, he leaves his desire, his food and his drink for the sake of Allah. So therefore the reward is given as we heard. And shahwatahu, the desires, the things that breaks the fast, and the food and the drink, the relations with his wife and things like this, from Fajr to sunset, and his food and drink, all of that for the sake of Allah. Not because he wants to lose weight or anything like that, it's all for the sake of Allah. If he have the choice, he would eat. But what's preventing him from eating or drinking is the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded him to stay away from it. And then the Prophet ﷺ said, لِلصَّائِمِ فَرْحَتَانِ, the fasting person has two moments of joy. فَرْحَةٌ عِنْدَ فِطْرِ وَفَرْحَةٌ عِنْدَ لِقَاءِ رَبِّ. A moment of joy when he breaks his fast, and a moment of joy when he meets his Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the first one is especially for those who, I don't want to say especially for the youth, but it's always the advice of those who are older to advise the younger ones. You know, you would never attain joy unless you have to go through some burden. You have to struggle to feel what it means to enjoy something, right? If you're just from enjoyment to enjoyment, you get bored and you go to depression because nothing will be satisfying anymore. So that's why those who are the most joyful people in this life, those who work hard in this life. So when you work hard in the proper way, what happens when you take a rest? You feel good when you take a rest because you worked hard. And even the word ar-raha means what? You take rest. Take rest from what? From the opposite of that. You're not resting, so you take a rest. But if you're resting already, take a rest from a rest, it doesn't make sense. So that's why these types of ibadat brings this meaning to us. And we all know what it means at the moment of the Maghrib time. It's a very joyful moment. Everybody's getting together and everybody's waiting for that moment where he drinks and eat. And it's a joyful moment. And it's all for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes, during the day you're struggling and you're thirsty, you're hungry. But then make your heart attached to the end of the day, because it soon becomes, it's over. And then the real joy is when a person meets Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at the moment of death after this life, because of the deeds that he did for the sake of Allah. And then the Prophet ﷺ said, وَلَخُلُوفُ فَمِ الصَّائِمِ أَطْيَبُ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ مِنْ رِيحِ الْمِسْكِ. The smell of one's mouth when he's fasting is more pleasant to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than the smell of musk. Because as a normal thing, if a person's stomach is empty, then he might not have the most pleasant smell in his mouth. So that to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is more beloved than the smell of musk. And it's not a call for a person to keep his smell to be not good. No, a person can use the siwak, he can use the toothbrush and things like this, as long as he does not swallow anything of the taste of it. And the siwak is what is best, and there's no doubt that using the siwak, especially the fresh siwak, because the siwak needs to be fresh. It does not take away from the rewards of fasting because of this hadith, and a person should use it. And at the end, still the feel would be the same. Why? Because the stomach is empty. So a person doing this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, which is another benefit, that it's not always what we see. And this meaning is always present when you see certain acts of ibadah, like when people go for Hajj and Umrah, you don't look the best. When you're wearing the ihram, when you everybody looks the same, nothing on your head, right? But to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you are the best, meaning you're doing the best thing ever. So it's not always what human beings receive. We should really care more about what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us. So many hadith, of course, that are mentioned here, and we should go through them inshallah ta'ala, but because of the time we'll skip here inshallah. Also with regards to the salah, or the next point, I'm skipping some things here with the hadith, but inshallah ta'ala this is something that should be done till the end of the month inshallah. When it comes to, so this is fasting as an obligation, and we'll talk about some of the ahkam inshallah. But when it comes to the qiyam of Ramadan, Salatul Taraweeh, qiyam Ramadan, what's the ruling, what's the hukm of it? Is not to say the hukm of it so that a person would skip it, but it's something that is always associated with Ramadan, which is al-qiyam or Salatul Taraweeh. Salatul Taraweeh in Ramadan is not fard, it's not an obligation. So that means what? Skip it? No, it means to do it. Why? Because it's recommended, it's very stressed. But what makes Salatul Taraweeh unique in Ramadan is about getting together to pray Jama'ah Salatul Taraweeh. Salatul Taraweeh is Salatul Qiyam, Qiyamul Layl. And the Prophet ﷺ used to make Qiyamul Layl in Ramadan and in other than Ramadan. And there are many verses in the Quran that talks about Qiyamul Layl. And the hadith of Aisha radiallahu anha, that the Prophet ﷺ used to not to pray more than 11 rak'ah in Ramadan and in other than Ramadan. The only difference is in Ramadan is that it's done in Jama'ah, in the masajid. And it was at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, he led them, or the Prophet ﷺ prayed, and the people prayed behind the Prophet ﷺ by his salah for a few days. Then the Prophet ﷺ then afterwards did not come out to the people out of the fear that it becomes an obligation upon them. And then the people continued in the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ to pray in jama'at. They would pray in jama'at. So they knew that this is part of Salatul Layli in Ramadan, is to pray it in jama'at. And then at the time of Umar radiallahu anhu, he just made them all behind one imam. So this was not something new introduced. It was the same thing that it was at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. He just made them be led by one of one imam, like Ubay ibn Ka'b radiallahu anhu, who would lead the men. So the issue of the Salatul Taraweeh, again it's called Taraweeh from the word Ar-Raha that we just mentioned, rest. What is the meaning of that? Is that they used to pray 4 rak'ah and then they take a rest. They take a break after 4 rak'ah. But 4 rak'ah is not like one salah, 2 rak'ah and salam, 2 rak'ah and salam, and then they would take a break. and how long they would make the salah. This is again varies from one group to the other, but it should not be a quick salah. This is again, it's not a fard salah. The fard salah, the imam should recognize those who are behind him, the old and the weak and so on. It's an obligation. But for Salatul Taraweeh, yes, he should also recognize the people behind him, but people need to exert a little bit more of effort. Right? So more than the fard salah. Fard salah, you cannot sit if you're able to stand. It would invalidate your salah. If you're able to stand and you sit in the fard salah, it's not permissible. But for Salatul Taraweeh, if you are able to stand in the salah, if you're the youngest person in the crowd and you see that next to you a very old person is standing and you want to sit, there's no harm. Salah is valid, right? But if you're not sick, you get half of the reward of those who are standing. But if you have a choice of not praying because you don't want to stand long versus that you would sit is better for you. You get at least half of the reward. So, but this is not a call for us to sit, but rather to stand in the salah. And he mentions here that the issue of 11 or 21 or 36 rak'ahs, the matter is easy. The matter is at ease. It's not something that people should be angry with each other or calling each other names, or this masjid is like this. No, the matter is easy. Why? Because Salatul Layli mathna mathna. The night prayer is 2 rak'ah after 2 rak'ah. So you don't need to limit yourself. You can pray 2 rak'ah after 2 rak'ah after 2 rak'ah till the end of the night. And there's no set limit or numbers of rak'at. But if you want the best is, as the hadith of Aisha radiallahu anha, that the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam would pray 11 rak'ah, but long 11 rak'ah. And that's why Sheikh, he mentioned 3 categories of things to make it easy. He says there is, when it comes to Salat al-Qiyam or Salatul Taraweeh, there is the prophetic way, and there is the Salaf way, otherwise the early generations of Islam used to do things, and there is the Khalaf way, the later generations, what they do, which is not the best way. The Prophet ﷺ would pray 11 rak'ah, long 11 rak'ah. The early generations of Islam, and it's authentically proven even at the time of Umar radiallahu anh, they would increase the number of rak'at and they would stand less. But they would increase the number of rak'at to make it easy for the people. Some people, it's difficult for them to stand long. So they would increase the number of rak'at. Instead of 11, it becomes 21. Some would, they mentioned 36, like Imam Malik rahimahullah. So this was, something that they would do. Why? Because that's from the sunnah of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, that Salatul Layli mathna mathna. You pray the night prayer 2 rak'ah after 2 rak'ah. But again, then the later generations, what do? He says, which is not the best choice, is when someone prays 11 rak'ah and it's short. Right? So if you have a choice between, and I mentioned that before, like say just for the sake of making it clear, I'm not saying that this should be, but say for example, if people pray Salatul Taraweeh in 2 hours, right? So to pray in 2 hours, if they pray 21 rak'ah, they would pray in 2 hours. And if they pray 11 rak'ah, they would pray in 2 hours. Which one is more virtue? 11. Right? They prayed the same time. So 11 is longer standing. So this is more or better in reward. But if people would pray the 21 rak'ah in 2 hours, and others they would pray the 11 rak'ah in 1 hour, which is better? The 21 or the 23. Right? Because they prayed more time. So, and the best in both is, of course, yes, if it's 11, but long rak'ah. So when people just say, okay, 11, and they make it short, like the other rak'ahs of the 21 or the 23, no, it's better that you do the 21 or the 23 in this case. So, but at the end, again, it's not a subject of dispute. For those who say 23 or 21 is bid'ah, they're wrong. Innovation in the deen, they're wrong. And for those who say 11 rak'ah is bid'ah, they are wrong. Right? Both are good, inshaAllah ta'ala. But if you want to do longer salah, then 11 long is better than more if it's short. And whatever is at ease with the people, and of course to follow the Imam. And the hadith of the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام من صلى مع إمامي حتى ينصرف كتبت له قيام ليلة. Whoever prays with his Imam till the Imam finishes, it will be recorded for him the one night prayer. From the hadith of the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام من قام رمضان إيمانا واحتسابا غفر له ما تقدم من ذنبه. Whoever prays the night prayer Ramadan, it will be written for him إيمانا واحتسابا, believing in it and seeking rewards from Allah, his sins will be forgiven. And that reward is attained if a person finishes in all of Ramadan with Qiyamul Layl. So from the first night till the last night of Ramadan, not missing one night. And the first night, many people they miss it, especially if it's the Hilal is seen, and that means tomorrow is the first day of Ramadan. People are not in the mood of Ramadan yet, or they think that the first night prayer is after they fast. No, the first night in the night prayer is the night before the first day of fasting. So to make sure that they would make it and they would pray the night prayer. And the meaning of the hadith, to make sure that you get the reward of one Qiyamul Layl or night prayer, is to stay with the Imam. Is it the specific Imam or the Imam of the Salah? What if there are more than one Imam, they're taking turns in the Salah? What is meant is that till the Salah finishes, regardless of who's the one that is leading, one or two or more. So till they finish. One on the side mas'ala like this, the last 10 nights of Ramadan, where you would find a prayer in the beginning of the night and then there's another prayer at the end. Does the person get the reward of one night prayer in the beginning one or the last one, or both? It's best to do both, because there's still salah going on the masjid, right? Even though they break in the middle and then they come back. So to come back again also, inshallah ta'ala, to make sure that you finish the salah with them, so that you would attain, inshallah ta'ala, the reward for sure, inshallah ta'ala. And that requires, yes, your schedule is different, it changes. As we said yesterday, one of the things that are meant in these months, Sha'ban and Ramadan, is that you go against your norm. It's okay. It's okay for sometimes that you're changing your norms. It's meant to be that way because you're doing it for the sake of Allah. And the Prophet ﷺ, when the last 10 nights of Ramadan enters, he used to ahya layla. He would pray most of the night, if not all of it. وَشَدَّ الْمِئْزَرَ, and he would tight his door sheet. That means as a sign of hard work or staying away from his wives. And he would wake up his family. So it's sometimes we have to do more than what we do for the rest of the year, and this is one of the times to do that, and especially with seeking Laylatul Qadr. And the best ibadah in Laylatul Qadr is the salah, because the salah has Quran recited, has dua, has dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, everything. And while listening to the Imam in the Quran, you can make dua. If the word of the Jannah is mentioned, ask Allah for Jannah. If the Nar is mentioned, seek refuge in Allah from the hellfire. If the virtue, if the bounties of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are mentioned, ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for His bounty, and so on. So one also thing on the side like that is with the dua of al-qunut, and we're probably going to hear more of that inshallah ta'ala later. The dua in Salatul Tarawih, in the Witr Salah, it's a good thing, and it can be from the beginning to the end. But as mentioned in the authentic narration in Sahih ibn Khuzaymah, with a sound narration, that Ubay ibn Ka'b radiallahu anhu, at the time of Umar radiallahu anhu, the Sahaba, when they would pray Salatul Tarawih in Ramadan, they would make the dua of al-Qunut in the second half of Ramadan, not in the beginning of Ramadan. They would start the dua of the Qunut every day from the second half of Ramadan. But if the Imam do it from the beginning of the Ramadan, that's fine. It's okay to do it every day. But they would do it in the second half of Ramadan, which is towards the end of the month of Ramadan. And the etiquettes and the way to do the dua also, it's something that should be observed to be according to the way of the Prophet ﷺ. So this is the subject of the Taraweeh prayer, and following the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Some people they invent certain things what they do in Salatul Taraweeh, whether they make a call for it before it starts, as-salatu jami'a or something like this. There's no such a thing. Or to make a special dhikr between the raka'at or raise their voice with takbir or salah on the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. There's no such a thing. But rather to follow the Imam in the Salah, and the standing in the Salah reminds a person of the standing in the Day of Judgment. Afterwards, if people pray witr or they delay the witr to the end of the night, that's fine, as long as they would not leave till the Imam finishes the Salah. And this is what is best, inshallah ta'ala. After that, one last thing before Salatul Isha. He says, وينبغي أن يعلم أن المشروع للمسلم في قيام رمضان وفي سائر الصلوات هو الإقبال على صلاته. When we talk about the Salah, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us with regards to the Salah is, He says, الإقبال على صلاته. What does إقبال means? What's إقبال? What's the best word describing الإقبال? There's I guess it's also in Urdu, it's known? Accept? No, al-qabul is accept. Al-qabul is accept. But al-iqbal, the height, no, it's when you're going forward to something. When, like for example, istiqbal al-qibla. When you face the qibla, so this is it's called istiqbal al-qibla. So al-iqbal ala shay, that means you're giving all of your senses to that thing. And it's part of that is the observing the khushu', the devotion. Like for example, if you're going to, you have a meeting with the king or with the president, and you enter on the president and he's right in front of you, but you're walking looking like this or looking like this, right? You're not making that full attention, right? This is not the proper way to do it. So al-iqbal is that you are going to something and you're facing it and you're focused on it. The salah, when a person is making salah, huwa what yunaji rabbah. The musalli, he's making munajah with Allah. And munajah is what? Is the secret talk. Is the talk between like an individual, another individual, that no one else is listening to you except those who you are sitting with for that important conversation that you have. So the salah is between the human being and his creator subhanahu wa ta'ala. So a person have to have that iqbal, this going forward, devoted in the salah, that as a result of that, the person would have the khushu' and the devotion in the salah. The same thing, by the way, in our majalis like this, majalis al-ilm and thing. If someone comes to you as a guest and he's sitting, but instead of you sit with him like this, you give him your back and you become busy with something else, he will leave you. This is bad manners. So you give attention to that person that come and visits you, right? So those who come to the masjid, they are guests for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So to give one's attention, to be focused on this and to seek help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be upon this. So he says this, al-iqbal, this is in the qiyam al-Ramadan, in the 5 daily salah at all times. Wal-khushu' fiha, and to have the khushu', the devotion in the salah, the focus in the salah, the presence of the heart in the salah. وَالطُّمَأْنِينَ فِي الْقِيَامِ وَالْقُعُودِ وَالرُّكُوعِ وَالسُّجُودِ, and to have tuma'nina, tranquility, don't be in haste when it comes to the salah. And the salah is, by the way, is heavy, is great, except إِلَّا عَلْى الْخَاشِعِينَ, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَإِنَّهَا لَكَبِيرَةٌ إِلَّا عَلَى الْخَاشِعِينَ. The salah is kabira, it's a big thing, except upon the khashi'in. The khashi'in, then it becomes easy for them. So that's why the khushu' is a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it's a deed that should be acquired, and it requires mujahada. A person has to struggle with himself to bring the khushu' and the devotion in the salah, which is a mixture of all kinds of things, and not to be in haste. So he says, لأن روح الصلاة, Sheikh Ibn Baaz رحمه الله says, لأن روح الصلاة هو الإقبال عليها بالقلب والقالب والخشوع فيها وأداؤها كما شرع الله بإخلاص وصدق ورغبة ورهبة وحضور قلب. The spirit or the soul of the salah is to الإقبال عليها. When it's time for the salah, you're not distracted. You're trying to make yourself going forward for that most important action in our life. And we have to repeat these meanings on our hearts, because the shaitan won't leave us alone. And we are commanded to make the salah even in the midst of our busy day. You might be leaving something that is stressing you out in work or something like this, and you leave that to make salah. So all of that stress comes with you. But we have to train our hearts that what you're leaving is nothing compared to what you're going forward to. How a person would go to his work and he has a major issue there and he focuses on it. This is nothing compared to the salah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded us to observe. So the salah, we ought to be more in the salah, in every salah. And since it's happening every day, so we tend to overlook it. And that's why the mujahada has to be done constantly and to remind ourselves. And the struggle is a good thing. And it transforms the person one day after the other. And that's why the way to do it is to follow the way the Prophet ﷺ, whether it's to go earlier for the salah, to make, once a person start, the adhan is called, and we're deprived from listening to the adhan should be some interaction that we have with the adhan. You repeat after the muadhin, la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, like this. Then you go make wudu. You're not making wudu and thinking about your job and about your family and about your children. We should think, or to make ourselves to focus on, once we have to detach from all of these types of things and to focus on what we're doing. And we are suffering in these days from not able to detach, because we're attached all the time, right, with the phones, and you're not able to detach yourself. So constantly looking and sending messages or looking at this or reading this. Where's the time that a person would detach himself and stay away from all of this and devote in his ibadah? If it's time to read the Quran, stay away from these types of distractions. If it's time for the salah, from the moment we make wudu, we should make everything away from us. And whatever concerns you, it's all owned by Allah. So you're not going to lose anything. You're not going to miss anything. It's all by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we should do the best we can in this. So this is the iqbal on the salah, as he says. This is the spirit of the salah. Bil-qalbi wal-qalib. Bil-qalb is the heart. Al-qalib is Al-qalib is when you mold something. You have what do you call it? When you're trying to manufacture, how for example, how did they manufacture this phone? They had a mold, prototype, right? And then, and this is the standard of it. So Al-qalib refers to your physical body, right? So your heart and your physical body is going forward. You're not distracted. You're going for the salah. Wal-khushu', the devotion in it, and to do the salah as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded us, with ikhlas, seeking rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, sidq, truthfulness, raghba, hoping for the rewards from Allah, rahba, having the fear that this might not be accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, wa hudur qalb, and the heart is present in the salah, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ الَّذِينَ هُمْ فِي صَلَاتِهِمْ خَاشِعُونَ. The mu'minun are successful, those who, the first quality is, they are in the salah, in their salah, khashi'un, they are in state of khushu'. And that's why this is the joy of this life, as the Prophet ﷺ used to say, وَجُعِلَتْ قُرَّةُ عَيْنِي فِي الصَّلَةِ. The comfort of my eyes have been made in the salah. So we should not be in the sad reality that year after year passes and our salah is the same salah. We're talking about those who make salah, not those who do not make the salah. But the salah is the same thing, it's the same level. Now we have to elevate ourselves, and that comes with وَالَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا فِينَا لَنَهْدِيَنَّهُمْ سُبُلَنَا. Those who struggle in our path, in our way, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will guide them to His way subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as the Prophet ﷺ, when he described the salah, إِذَا قُمْتَ إِلَى الصَّلَاةِ فَأَسْبِغِ الْوُضُوء, part of that is to make a perfect wudu and then to face the qibla and things like this. So all of that is for the fard salah at all times. And also for the qiyam, a person studying in the salah does not know what is being happening or making it fast or things like this. This is something that should be avoided, but rather to have the tuma'nina and to fulfill it in the most perfect way to one's best ability, inshallah ta'ala. It's time for the salah, so we'll stop here, inshallah. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us among those who are helped and guided to make the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to make the ibadah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the most perfect way, and to observe this adab and these manners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We'll mention some things after the salah also, inshallah, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على محمد وصحبه وسلم.